screenshot.
Yeah.
Lost it again.
Lori, there's pizza and salad, cookies in the back.
Thanks. Thanks. No wonder you're good. How are you?
Paul. Paul.
What? Something calling me?
Hi.
What? Oh, shit. Yeah. Welcome to our public meeting. We need to do roll call. All right. I'd like to turn over the meeting to Monica, city manager, about crisis communications and social media.
Oh, hi.
Actually, I'll just hand it over
Yep.
to.
Yeah, come on up, Scott. We'll start by introducing ourselves. I'm Tom Flatting. I'm the managing partner at Hennis Communications. We're based in Cleveland with an office in Akron. We are crisis communication specialists. We work a lot with public bodies like this. We also work with international firms, small nonprofits. We do about 130 clients a year. And our job, as we tell people, is to prepare you for the crisis so that when it hits, and it's always when, not if, we can make it go away faster. We're going to talk with you today about social media and public officials. And we'll get into that more deeply later. But let me introduce my co-presenter, Scott.
My name is Scott Juba. I own my own consulting practice, Radar Public Relations and Consulting, that focuses heavily on digital communication. And I serve of counsel to Hennis Communications on all sorts of issues involving online communication.
Scott and I work together a lot. So, we're going to talk with you, as I said, about social media and crisis communications, because social media has become virtually everything when it comes to communications and crisis communications. I was 33 years in newspapers. Most recently as managing editor of the Plain Dealer. I was also managing editor of the Beacon Journal and the Detroit Free Press, and editor of the St. Paul Pioneer Press. I can tell you that nothing shocked my industry as much as the rise of social media and digital communications. In fact, the newspaper industry hasn't recovered and probably won't recover from it. It has that kind of earthquake effect on a variety of issues and occupations, including elected officials. To give you an idea of how in the moment this is, a state rep from Middletown, Ohio provided us an object lesson, I would argue, in how not to use Facebook this morning when she went on her personal page and said that the shootings in Dayton occurred because of the legalization of marijuana, protests by pro-athletes, transgender people, video games, gay marriage, and former President Obama. When contacted by the media, she told the Dayton Daily News, well, wait a minute, that was my personal Facebook page. It doesn't matter.
Nothing's personal.
There is nothing personal when it comes to social media. Oh, and by the way, she took it down. Forget it. Everyone had screenshotted it. She's now getting calls, everyone from the Washington Post, the Los Angeles Times, to the Guardian in London, to the Middletown Journal. And she finds herself in the middle of a firestorm.
So I wonder how much we
Right, right, and that's how those things oftentimes end. So when I was getting ready, when I was preparing this presentation, less than a month ago, it was the morning of July 8th, and a reporter for the St. Paul Pioneer Press, which was one of my former papers, he took to Twitter to criticize a Minneapolis City Council member who blocked reporters from following her Twitter account. And that reporter's name's Fred Mello, was responding to another reporter who posted this on Twitter. I still can't believe the only elected official to block me, to my knowledge, is a local city council member who also blocks Star Tribune reporters. She calls it a personal account, but still uses it to advocate policy. This is peak anti-transparency. This all prompted others on Twitter to weigh in on how they've been wronged by elected officials on social media. And that afternoon of July 8th, hours later, Minneapolis Star Tribune broke a story that said the city of Minneapolis wants to rein in the online behavior of its elected officials, proposing the mayor and council members begin using city-approved social media accounts that prohibit them from blocking constituents. Draft overview, and this is that, shows the communications office would assert more control over social media in City Hall, including setting best practices for how elected officials use sites like Twitter and Facebook and maintain access to their accounts. And of course, the newspaper had a copy of the draft policy before it even came out, and they put it online. So I use that anecdote in the Middletown, Ohio official for a couple of reasons. I think it illustrates how much scrutiny social media accounts of elected officials are getting. And second, I think it shows the speed at which the issues arise. That's what social media does. And I think it shows you're all really in uncharted territory. Nationally, we're watching as courts establish new rules virtually by the day on this subject. On July 9th, the Federal Appeals Court ruled that President Trump has been violating the Constitution by blocking people from his Twitter account because he uses the account to conduct government business and therefore can't exclude some Americans from reading his posts. And similarly, in January, a federal appeals court ruled that an elected official in Virginia violated the First Amendment when she temporarily blocked a constituent on Facebook. Washington Post called it a novel case with implications for how government officials nationwide interact with constituents on social media. That official, by the way, in a separate court filing, contended that her account on a privately owned digital platform is personal, and she should be able to restrict who gets a chance to speak there without crossing constitutional lines. In this case, she considered a community activist post on her site to be slanderous. So who's right here? That is being determined right now. And these cases are going to continue winding through the courts. I would say probably all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. But the attorney who successfully argued the case against the Virginia elected official in the appeals court said, public officials who increasingly use social media accounts as public forums to foster speech and debate among their constituents have no greater license to suppress dissent online than they do offline. These examples speak specifically to the issue of blocking or limiting contact to social media sites. But there's much more tied up in the issues of elected officials and social media. Let's tick off some of them. Can an elected official really maintain a private or personal social media account? What are the implications for public records law? What are the implications for retention of public records? What are the implications for sunshine laws that apply to public meetings? How do you properly distinguish personal accounts from campaign accounts from official city accounts? So we're here to talk with you about all this today and more, and to give you pragmatic tips and best practices on using social media. Not how to. You guys know how to get on social media and use it, but what are the implications of doing that as an elected official? And we're here to talk to you about all this and more, and we started on the dark side of social media, which is what so many people do. But we're also here to say, we're not saying don't use social media. In fact, we'd say you really don't have a choice. So, for instance, there's the book New Media and Political Campaigns, published in 2014, which in the world of social media is actually a long time ago. It was one of the first to report on the internet taking a larger share of the voting audience, not surprisingly, particularly younger voters. The book said that voters in the 2012 presidential election and 2014 midterms still got the bulk of their information from television, 67%, 45%. But the internet back then was rising, with 47% of voters in the 2012 election and then 37% in 2014 saying they go to the web for information on elections. That trend will only increase for election news and every other kind of news. The Pew Institute is an organization that for years has done what is considered the gold standard survey of how Americans consume news. In December 2018, the Pew Institute reported that for the first time in its history, social media had exceeded print media as a primary news source. Just 16% of respondents said they depend on print media, like old-fashioned newspapers, for news. That was behind social media, which got 20%. In 1996, which I guess is a long time ago, but doesn't feel like a long time ago to me, the Pew study showed 72% of people surveyed read a newspaper daily, and only 12% were going online for news. I mean, look, this is the deal. Social media isn't the technology. It's an enduring cultural shift. And we'd argue that you'll do yourself and your constituents a disservice if you try to ignore social media. We're here today to help you understand the influence of social media, how that will only grow, to help you consider how to use social media effectively to help your city and yourself, and to share with you some guidelines we use in our work for all social media users, and some that we think specifically apply to elected officials. So social media has become a main news source because that's where the news is breaking. And in most urgent breaking news situations, Twitter is the go-to outlet. On June 12, 2016, around 2 a.m., a man walked into the Pulse nightclub in Orlando and began shooting. At 2:09 a.m., the club posted on its Facebook page, "Everyone get out of Pulse and keep running." At 2:17 a.m., more of the world began to learn about the shooting from tweets like this one. that was the first time that the public at large found out there was a shooter at the Pulse nightclub. And the Pulse nightclub shooting now is part of a depressing series of mass shootings. But for people that do things like Scott and I do, it was a sea mark, it was a sea change moment, because it was the first such event to be reported first on social media. After a 3-hour standoff, Orlando police shot and killed the gunman, and then where did they report that? They reported it on Twitter. It was the biggest news in the department's history, and they put it on Twitter first. So beyond being at that time the deadliest mass shooting by a single shooter ever in the U.S., is that seminal event showing how social media is now the place where news first happens. And just as people go to Twitter to find news, people go to Facebook to share news. Facebook has become one of the most trusted and reliable drivers of what people read. Back in the day when I was in newsrooms, Northwestern University did a landmark study of reader habits. They were trying to help newspapers out of what was already a tough spot. So they asked 50,000 people, what makes you want to go read a story? What motivates you to read a story? The number one answer was if friends tell me about it. And really that's one of those studies where you go, we spent money on this, because for time immemorial, if someone walks up and says, hey, you should go see that story in the News Herald. You got to see this story in the Plain Dealer. We knew you were much more likely to read it. Facebook just puts that on steroids. So I don't tell a friend at the water cooler, I tell my 1,000 friends, and they tell their 5,000 friends. And that's how stories and information goes viral.
I'm wondering when you say the word trusted, why would you say trusted? You can't do everything.
Oh, you don't. You don't. But when I say trusted, I don't mean trusted in the sense of you believe it. I mean trusted in that we know that people are going there to read things. And that's a good question. By the way, interrupt us at any point with questions. So Facebook, 67% of U.S. adults were on Facebook. 2/3 of them said they get news there, which means 44% of U.S. adults are getting news on Facebook. So Cleveland.com is a gigantic news website. It's the biggest in Ohio. It's one of the biggest in the region. About 40% of Cleveland.com's traffic, readers, come from Facebook. And TV news is still the major news source for Americans in general, but that clock is ticking. And millennials identify Facebook as their major news source. It is the most powerful tool we now have for distributing and receiving info amid an ongoing crisis. So, according to latest Pew Research, 7 out of 10 American adults use some type of social media. Back in 2005, only 1 in 20 adults use social media, and I'm going to turn it over to my partner here, who's going to walk you through how big this influence has gotten.
So as Tom said, 7 in 10 American adults use social media. Across the globe, how much time do you think an average person spends on social media per day? What would be your guess?
3 to 5 hours.
What's that?
What
3 to
age?
5.
What was that?
Depends what age.
That is true. It does vary quite a bit by age, but in general, 2 hours and 22 minutes is what the average adult spends per day on social media. For some age groups, it's even more than that. You're right, for ages who are 16 to 24, they spend more than 3 hours a day online. This further underscores what Tom said before, that social media is not something that's going away. It's an enduring cultural shift. The platforms by which people share news and get news online may change. 20 years from now, Facebook may not be the biggest social media platform out there, but there's going to be something that is. Social media is definitely not going away.
Oops, by the way.
So this just shows over time how much time the average person across the globe spends on social media per day. All the way back from 2012, that was just an hour and a half the average person spent per day on social media, to now it's well over 2 hours. In 2018, you can see on the right-hand side there that breakdown by age. Facebook is by far the most frequently used social network. Facebook has over 2.3 billion monthly users and 1.49 billion daily users. So that means more than 1.5 billion people are going on Facebook each and every day. As Tom mentioned before, more than 69% of all U.S. adults are on Facebook. And Facebook is really popular across all demographics. The notion that only young people use social media is something that's still true for certain social networks, such as Snapchat, for instance. But for Facebook, people across the age spectrum are using Facebook. In the US, 68% of people who are age 50 to 64 use Facebook, and almost half of all people who are over the age of 68 use Facebook. Instagram and Snapchat are the best social channels to reach young people, especially those who are 18 to 29. As you can see, 62% of people 18 to 29 use Snapchat, and 67% of American adults 18 to 29 use Instagram. So that is definitely very popular among the younger demographic, whereas Facebook has that more broad reach and broad appeal.
Don't you think that, I know my grandchildren went to this because of their mother couldn't watch that.
Right. That you see a lot of young people who have moved off of Facebook because their parents, their grandparents are getting on, so they're moving to things like Snapchat and Instagram that their parents can't see them on. So regardless of age, the public has certain expectations from government officials on social media. Paramount among those, two right off the bat, engagement and education. What do I mean by engagement? If you maintain a presence online in an official capacity, people expect you to be willing to converse with them and hear their thoughts and hear what's on their mind. When Cory Booker was the mayor of Newark, he was legendary for the way in which he did that. In doing so, he brought people closer to government and to government officials because he was so accessible online. You can see just a couple examples of his tweets that I put up here. Somebody complaining about that they lost a rim on their car on the street, and he got back to them and said that the pothole will be filled on Monday. Somebody who said that there was an accident that had happened, they still had not received a police response. He said, "Stay there, I'm coming right now myself." Now that is a really extreme example of being engaged with your constituents on social media. I'm not necessarily recommending that you have to be willing to run out to a traffic stop if one of your constituents is waiting for police. But the point is that he was very engaged and he was paying attention to what people were saying and what people were tweeting to him on Twitter, what people were saying to him on social media. People also expect government officials on social media to educate them. So they want to know what are important matters that they need to know about. That could be something as simple as trash pickup being delayed, or something as consequential as new commercial development happening near their neighborhood. Here's just an example from the city of Twinsburg about an important message from the police department that the area 911 calls were not being received and what to do if you needed to reach emergency responders. They also expect humanity and transparency. So what do I mean by humanity? You're expected to act like a real person when you're online. Write on social media as if you're having a conversation with someone, not as if you're writing an official report for government business, because essentially social media is a conversation. It's just a digital conversation that you're having with your constituents, so write that way. According to a survey conducted by Open the Government, more than half of all voters want to see more transparency and authenticity across all levels of government. And despite all the silly things we see on the internet, there are a lot of smart and savvy people who are online, and they are going to see right through something if you're not telling them the whole truth or not being completely transparent. I'm going to turn it back over to Tom for this next piece.
So amid all the change, we really believe that the fundamental rules of effective crisis communications apply to social media, just like they apply to all communications. And at Hannes, we use something called the damage control playbook, which includes just 5 simple concepts. And if caught up in a controversy, in something that challenges your reputation or the city of Painesville's reputation, if you skip the last 4 and do number 1, you have a decent chance of coming out of it with your reputation intact. Tell the truth. It's what we counsel every client right from the start. Tell the truth. Even if you don't believe it's the moral thing to do, it's the smart thing to do. Because if you don't, you motivate people to dig for more. And if you don't, you will get caught because the truth will come out, and you now have a much larger problem than you did originally. Ask yourselves, how often does the cover-up exceed the original crime? You know, Watergate was a cheap burglary that took down the president because he covered it up. Tell the truth. We also tell people to tell it first. Why tell it first? Rip the Band-Aid off. Because if you tell the story first, if you tell the problem that the city of Painesville has first, you have a much better chance of controlling that narrative and getting your voice out there and getting your side of the story told. And we know from our own best practices that the party that gets out and tells the truth and tells it first and tells as much of it as they can, they are believed, including in the face of subsequent reports that may not agree with them, that may present other facts. Tell it all really comes with an asterisk. We understand there are privacy issues. There may be HIPAA issues. There may be, if you're in education, FERPA issues, and there may just be flat personnel issues. But tell as much of it as you can, because again, it will come out. So better for you to control the narrative and control the story. Tell it fast is probably now second, only to tell the truth. And that's because the way the world has changed and how digital communications have changed communications. If you get nothing else from today, I do want you to leave here understanding this. So consider this media literacy 101 along with crisis communications. How many of you have heard of the term iterative reporting? Anybody? Yeah. So iterative reporting started about 5 years ago. It is what every newsroom now practices, from the small to the large. And it is the most fundamental change I saw in 33 years of doing journalism. This is how iterative reporting works, and it's all because of the speed of the internet. In a nutshell, iterative reporting means once a reporter is convinced that he or she has the basic facts are known and that it's a worthy news story, they're going to put the story on the internet. The way that's different is, back in my day, when dinosaurs walked the earth and I ran newsrooms, if you and you and you were the key people in a story, we spent hours, sometimes days, chasing you and you and you to get a comment. And we didn't publish the story until we had done our damnedest to get you. And if it was bad news, you dodged us. And we knew that. You didn't return our calls, you didn't go to your office, and we went to your office and left business cards, we chased you, we left phone calls, we did registered mail, just so we could prove we had tried to reach you. One of my papers, the Detroit Free Press, with particularly sensitive stories, we required reporters to show us 6 different ways they had tried to get a source before we allowed them to write could not be reached for comment. Those rules are gone. Those rules are shattered. And the reason they're shattered is because of the way the internet works. So beyond accepted, it's expected to publish a story before you've spoken to all the key people involved. You still got to get the basic facts right. And just about every reporter I still know, and I keep in touch with virtually all of them, believes that. They still got to play fair and try to contact you. But if you're not there, and maybe it's for legitimate reasons, you have other things to do, you couldn't answer that call. It's too late, and the first story is going out. Here's why that's important. If you wait to call the reporter back, if you're not there immediately, if you're not prepared, your voice isn't in that initial story. And that initial story so often is the one that is most read, that sets the tone for everything that comes after. The reason journalism has gone to this is, again, that speed. So, I mentioned before that about 40% of the traffic to Cleveland.com comes from Facebook. The other big driver is Google. It's search. Nobody, some people still do, I still do, but hardly anybody types in www.cleveland.com. They go there from Facebook links, they particularly go there from Google searches. Well, we don't understand Google Analytics. It's a deeply held secret. If you know it, let me know, and we'll both drive really nice cars. But what we do know is that Google rewards speed. So if it's a breaking news story, and if you're not in, I used to tell my reporters, if you're not in those first 3 results, if people search for the city of Painesville because there's some controversy or crisis going on, and your story isn't in the first 3 results, you're losing thousands of readers. If it's not on the first page of Google search results, you're dead, because nobody goes to the second page. So reporters know they have to be first, more than ever. So they're not going to wait for you. This is the other reason. I'm going to throw one more stat. half or more of traffic to news websites now comes on these. Not on desktops, not on iPads, on phones. So you guys read news on your phone? Right? So if you ever did get in a situation like this, a lot of times, you know, the reporter, you'll call the reporter back. You want to tell the truth. You want to tell as much of it as you can. You call the reporter back and say, hey, I just can't take your first call. I see there's a story up. I want to get in the story. And the reporter says, fine, I'll update the story. Don't. Ask for a new story. And the reason you ask for a new story is because it resets the Google search engine. You get a new headline, and that story pops back up into the Google search results, usually not above the original story, but around it. And that's crucial for you if you want your voice out there. Because ask yourself, when you're reading news on your smartphone, do you ever go back to see if that story got updated? Nobody does. Of course not. We used to call it the river at cleveland.com. It's literally a river of news, and it flows fast. So if I can give you no other tip on media relations, if you get into that situation, ask for a new story. And by the way, the reporter, especially if you give them enough to do a new story, they'll be happy to do it. Because the other thing that's changed is reporters are measured, oftentimes including their salary, by how many stories they file a day. Because the river demands a lot of stories. They'll do a new story and your voice will be in it. So, any questions about interview reporting? Because it really changes the game. So when you're dealing with conventional media, obviously you're dealing with mass media. There are all kinds of people watching this newscast, reading that newspaper, reading that website. We're most worried about, when it comes to crisis communications, we're most worried about the people who really care about you. Those are your key stakeholders. You know, your employees, your customers, your vendors, your constituents, other local officials. You get the idea, right? And we most want to get your story to them. So there are lots of ways we tell clients to do that. There's personal meetings, there's phone calls, there's old-fashioned letters, there's email. But one of the newest is social media. Because the people who care about you most, about you, or the people you serve, or the city, they go to your website. They go to Painesville's website. They go to your Facebook page if you have one. They follow your Twitter feed. And again, what we find is those most important audiences, the ones that trust you, if they hear from you first, they are more likely to believe you, including in the face of information that seems to disagree with yours. So, social media is a powerful weapon for getting your side of the story out. Scott's going to talk now how best to use that weapon.
One of the things that I think becomes critical when you maintain an active presence on social media is to be monitoring for what's said about you on social media. There's a couple reasons why this is very important. First of all, it's a good early warning system for problems. If misinformation or other negative information is out there, you don't want to allow that to have time to fester because, you know, the old saying is perception becomes reality. And that's really true. If people keep hearing something and perceive it to be true over time, even if it's not true, it's going to be hard later on to correct that misperception. Monitoring what people are saying about you and related to you on social media also gives you insight into what's on community members' minds. This can help inform your communication efforts in terms of what you put out proactively. Another big one is, I think from social media is not going to make online criticism of you go away. If somebody's saying something bad about you online, if you're not also online or not paying attention to it, the only difference is you don't have a voice in the conversation. They're out there saying it, and you're not saying anything. Now, when you detect something that could be perceived as a potential reputation threat on social media, there's some questions you want to ask, because the number one thing people ask in a situation like this is, okay, I found something that's negative about the city of Painesville online. How do I know whether or not I should respond to this? Should I just leave this sit? Should we do something about it? On these next couple of slides, these are the questions you really need to ask yourself to determine, do you take action and respond, or do you just sit back and let it be?
And by the way, that's the number one question we get.
Yeah.
Is how do I know what to do with this criticism that's on?
First and foremost, you need to ask, where did the threat originate? If it originated online but is now moved offline or vice versa, it's more serious than if it's a more contained and scope. Who began disseminating negative information online? Is it somebody who is prominent in the community? Obviously, if that's the case, it's going to be more worrisome than if it's somebody who's not well known. Is the negative information being discussed and disseminated by an increasing number of people as time goes on? If the answer is yes, that means that the threat is gaining momentum. And as I said before, perception is reality. If an increasing a number of people see negative information about you and it goes unchecked, they're likely to believe that that information is true. Another question you want to ask is, has the mainstream media begun covering the situation? If it is, you see that this is growing legs and this is becoming a bigger story in scope. And obviously, if the media is out there reporting it, as Tom just addressed and talked about, you want to have your voice in those stories. Also, keep this in mind. The media uses frameworks to tell stories. A popular one is what's known as the 3 V's, which is the victim, the villain, and the vindicator. So there is a victim who has in some way been wrong. There is the vindicator who sweeps into the rescue and helps to right the wrong or save the day. And then there is the villain who perpetrated the wrong. If you get cast in the role of the villain, it is incredibly difficult to later get out of that role. So oftentimes what you will see is if there's accusations of wrongdoing by city government, there is, somebody, some community members, maybe the community as a whole, who are perceived as the victims. The reporter often puts themselves in the role of the vindicator. They're shining light on this and getting justice for taxpayers and community members. And then if you become the villain, it's very unlikely that a member of the media later on is going to go back and readjust that framework and cast you as anything but. Understanding of the situation which led to this complaint or negative information. Is it true? Did something bad really happen? Is this misinformation? Those are important questions. Now here's a few more questions that will further help you to hone in on whether or not an online threat merits a response. Is the person or organization disseminating that negative information a public figure or an entity that is well known in the community? Obviously, if they are, there's a good chance you're probably going to want to respond to that information because this is somebody who has influence and who has some clout within the community. Does the person or organization have a substantial following across social media? So is this somebody who's got 20 followers on Twitter and is more or less just shouting in the wind to hear themselves speak? Or is this somebody who has thousands of followers online? And one way that you can tell if somebody has a substantial following across social media, just go look at their number of friends or followers. Look at their posts. Do their posts get a lot of engagement? Are there a lot of people liking those posts, commenting on those posts, sharing those posts? Because that's what really matters. If people are commenting, liking, and sharing a post, that's going to help that post to go viral and be seen by an increasing number of people. And we talked about, does the organization's post or the person's post generate a lot of user interaction? And does that person or organization regularly engage with key people or organizations in the Painesville community? Again, if that's an answer that's yes, that's one that likely is going to require a response. Now, if after analyzing the previous questions, you come to the decision that you're going to respond to an online threat, there are best practices to follow in doing so. Number one, don't get emotional. We see this happen far too often, that the work you do becomes personal to you, and that's natural. When somebody's criticizing that, accusing you or somebody else in the city of wrongdoing, it can be very easy to get emotional and want to hit back with an emotional response. When you respond, you should always respond in a calm manner that sticks to the facts. You always want to stick to the facts. In many cases, you might want to move the conversation offline. So let's say you have a Facebook post and somebody makes a comment with a complaint. A great thing to do may be to say, we hear your complaint, we'd like to discuss this more with you. Could you give so-and-so a call at this number or contact them at this email address so that people will see that you were very transparent about handling that situation. You didn't ignore it. you addressed it, but you're moving that conversation online so you don't have this long back and forth that's playing out for everybody to see online. Also, you want to respond and correct misinformation, but you want to resist that temptation to delete negative comments and negative posts, unless they are offensive. I mean, obviously they're racial, profane, personal attacks, or violate someone's individual privacy, or violate your social media user guidelines. In those cases, you may want to delete them. But by and large, if somebody's critical of you, you don't want to delete those posts from your social media accounts because it makes it look like you have something to hide. You're far better off to address them, and in many cases I just talked about trying to move that conversation online because that shows you're being transparent and you're hearing the complaints that people are putting out there. If possible, you might want to capture screenshots of important social media posts about a situation, because so often litigation can be involved in these matters, as people can go and delete posts that they made. And if they deleted them and you haven't captured them with a screenshot, or others haven't captured them with a screenshot, you don't have a record of those. So capturing a screenshot of important posts is always a very smart and a very good idea. If you're going to hold a press conference or any event which you'll be speaking about a crisis situation, and you have a Twitter account, or you have a Facebook account, or the city has an Instagram account, use the live services that all of these social networks offer for free. It's just another way for people to be informed and to engage with you on social media. Now, after a situation begins to wind down, you have to come to the determination of when the threat is over. And some questions you want to ask for that is, number one, is social media discussion dwindling every day? Obviously, if it is, this shows you that it's not gaining momentum and things are beginning to wind down. Likewise, is online media coverage dwindling every day? If the media is continually posting new stories, updating previous stories, posting new stories, the situation isn't winding down. It's still in full swing. But obviously, if that media coverage starts to dissipate, that shows you things are slowing down. Very important are your relationships with your affected stakeholder groups as strong or stronger than they were before. You can go through a crisis situation and you can handle it in such a way that you can come out with strengthened relationships with these stakeholder groups rather than weakened ones based on how you handle the situation. But certainly, if you feel like any of those key constituents you have, if you're not in a good place with them and they've lost trust in you, the situation isn't over, you still got a lot of work to do. Now, when an online threat has been resolved, this process should not stop there. In any crisis situation, when there is a threat that has been addressed and resolved, you should ask yourself some key questions to better prepare yourself for the next time a situation like that happens. Paramount among those are, what did we do well? What are the things that really worked well, that were strengths of how we handled this? What could have we done better and improved upon? I think that's really of all of these. That's one of the most key ones. What would you do differently the next time around now that you know what you learned from this situation? Did anything happen that you not anticipated? Chances are the question is going to be yes. I mean, as much work as Tom and I do in crisis communications, with every case we handle, there's almost something that comes up that's unexpected along the way that might throw you for a loop. And you want to address that and what you learned from that. Also, if you were a member of the public, how would you feel about how the city handled this situation? I think probably, all of you are aware, good communication starts with putting yourself in the other person's shoes and looking at a situation through their eyes. So being able to put yourself in the shoes of a member of the general public and how they would feel about this, I think is a very good thing to do. So hopefully that gave you a little bit of a framework of how you think about online threats when you detect them and how you decide whether or not to address them and follow through on them. Do you have any questions about that before we move on to this next section?
I have a question on this exactly about that, but one of my questions
Sure.
was, what about people like stealing your identity and posing it? Does that happen much?
It does happen. Actually, it's a great question to ask, because that's exactly what we're going to start talking about right now. Because another very real threat in today's digital era is having your social media accounts hacked or having your email account hacked by a malicious actor. Even Mark Zuckerberg has had his accounts hacked, so I mean, if it can happen to him, surely it can happen to any of us in this room. So here are some simple threats, some simple tips to help you prevent being hacked, and obviously if you're hacked, that's the beginning point of having your identity stolen. So here are some simple steps that you can follow from a city's perspective to help guard against that. Number one, have multiple administrators of each account. So that means if you have a Facebook page, have multiple people who have administrative access to it. If you have a Twitter account, have multiple people who have the password and know the password. Same thing with an Instagram account. Now you don't want necessarily a ton of people to have that information, but around 2, 3, 4 people. Because so many times we've seen it, an employee who runs your social media, if they become disgruntled and they're the only ones who have the password or the administrative access, they can suddenly decide that they're not going to turn that information over to you. And it is a really difficult process then to try to regain access to those accounts. So having multiple people at any time who have administrative access is of the utmost importance. You want to have complex passwords for each account. Good passwords have a mix of uppercase and lowercase letters, numbers, and special characters. Also, good passwords do not use widely available information about you, such as your spouse's name, your children's name, the name of the street you live on, your dog's names. Those are information that's all very easy to find out, and those would be some of the first things people would try if they're trying to gain access to an account. Also, be very careful if you're logging into accounts from public Wi-Fi, because you can have, there's been case studies done where somebody has literally been sitting in a parking lot with some very cheap software that's easy to obtain, and they're logging some of these keystrokes who's sitting inside the building next to them using public Wi-Fi. So when you're using public Wi-Fi, I would not encourage you to be logging into accounts and using the passwords. Certainly, just from a personal perspective, I wouldn't encourage you to do any online banking or any online financial transactions using public Wi-Fi. And getting your email account hacked or getting a virus on your computer or on your administrative system through an email is another very real possibility. Hackers are becoming increasingly sophisticated at sending emails that look legitimate, that coax you into clicking on a malicious link or downloading a virus. But there are usually some telltale signs in an email to look out for, though. Number one, an overly generic subject line. Something that says, hello, your credit card account. Something like that is very generic and not specific. Also, if there's typos, oftentimes you will see, if you read an email closely that is an email that's trying to hack you, there will be minor typos here and there that just wouldn't get through from a reputable agency. Oftentimes, this is a big one, this is a big red flag. If there's any sort of threat to take action immediately, if they're telling you must act within 24 hours or 48 hours, most reputable places, if there is an issue that they're contacting you about, they're not going to give you such a tight time frame by which you have to act or respond. The actual email address is different from the displayed email address. So what will happen is malicious actors can spoof an email address to make it appear as if it's one email address when it's actually being sent from another email account. And I'll show you a way that you can sometimes detect that. Same sort of thing, the actual link is different from the link text that is displayed. And I am actually going to, again, show you an example of that to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. So, okay, what you say here, this appears to be an email from PayPal, from their billing department, about a credit or debit card update. Now, you see so many of the things that I just mentioned are apparent. So, you see up there, it looks as if the email address is billing@paypal.com. However, if you take your mouse and hover it over that email address, what it shows you is that actual address is, I can't read it from here, but something at AOL.com. It's not a PayPal.com email address whatsoever.
It's actually Z threat.
Z-Threat, yeah, Z-Threat at AOL.com, so it's clearly not from PayPal. You can see here, failure to update your record will result in account suspension. This notification expires on 48. Well, clearly a couple things here. One, they're giving you that threat that you have to act quickly. And then also, the notification expires on 48. What does that mean, in 48 hours? And, there's a typo there that usually communications from someone like PayPal will not be included in there. Again, they have a link here that says to update your account, please click on this link. Now, chances are, if you click on that link, it's probably going to send you to a page that looks very much like a PayPal page to enter your information. But if you scroll your mouse over that link, you can see that that link is actually not a PayPal.com link whatsoever. It's a 66.160.154.156 email address. That's a malicious address that does not belong to PayPal. So that should throw up a big red flag for you as well. So having gone over, this risk of, having accounts hijacked or having, your email hacked or a virus being delivered through email, do you have any questions on that?
I have.
Okay.
So is it more dangerous to have an email that's a .com than like a .org?
No, I wouldn't say so. No, I don't think there's any real basis behind that. Any other questions?
The other thing I'd add that you need to watch out for is we all saw the recent Equifax hack. So if your bank gets hacked, if your Macy's gets hacked, and your account's part of that, be very careful about how you're responding to email inquiries about that. Data breaches are now the number one, data breaches in cybersecurity, the number one crisis we now work on. We don't go a month without having another one. One of the most recent gains is the hackers come after people who had accounts with the hacked account. That hacked account Equifax should send you information saying, we will only contact you at this email. Or actually they will say, contact us at this email, and it's a secure email. They won't reach out to you. They will never call you. The FBI won't call you. Equifax won't call you. If you get those calls and they're asking you for information, it's someone trying to commit fraud on top of the fraud that's already been committed. It's now one of the most frequent crimes we see.
Also, another frequent one is with the IRS. The IRS is not going to send you threatening emails. The IRS does all its communication via mail.
Right.
Okay, so I'm going to segue things back to Tom unless we have any additional questions on that or anything we've covered up to this point.
So I want to get into talking about professional versus private social media channels and Ohio records law on social media. But before I do that, I want to tell you about, I learn best from things that work, from people who have successfully done something. I want to tell you about two clients we had, one of which I worked on and one of which Scott and I worked on, that did a lot of what Scott was talking about with threat assessment and response correctly and survived the social media attack. One was a large private school in another state. 2 years, it'll be 2 years this Labor Day. Labor Day weekend, and by the way, this is when crises happen, right? Crises never happen on Tuesday at 11 a.m. when everybody's at work. You have your team together. Crises happen on the Sunday before Labor Day. That's what happened. What happened was a student posted a Twitter, sent the school directed a tweet at the school that said, handle this. And what it was a screenshot from Snapchat that showed a bunch of other students using misogynistic, racist, and really hate speech, horrible language. What did the school do? They saw the tweet, they responded within a half an hour and said, we're aware of this, we're following up on this, we'll send you more information as soon as we have it. That night, the head of the school sent out an email to the entire upper school, it was an upper school, lower school situation, to the entire upper school saying, we're aware of this, we have talked to the parents and students involved, we're organizing assemblies for Tuesday. They also went to their website and posted that message with a link to their student handbook that had the guidelines on hate speech at the school and the possible disciplinary results. That Tuesday, they organized an assembly that included the local NAACP, the head of the Black Student Union, head of student council, and the head of school, talking about the situation. They live tweeted that, also videoed it, and live streamed it on their website, so their entire community could see it. They then followed up with emails from both the head of the upper school and lower school and the overall school, explaining what they had decided to do, how they were investigating it, what they were doing with the parents, and how this was all going to come down. Now, was it still hard on the school? Yeah, it was still hard on the school. The newspaper and all 3 TV stations in town came out and did stories. But that day, that Tuesday, the student who had originally posted "handle this" went back on Twitter and said, "I'm proud to be a member of this school. This is why I like going to school here, because of this response." And independent people on Twitter who had no association with the school started tweeting things like, "This is how you use a horrible situation to teach people." That's about as good as it gets when you're facing a social media firestorm. Another situation, and this was an organization that hadn't been active on social media and had to get up to speed quickly, that Scott worked with me on, was a nursing home, an elder home. Someone posted a picture of an elderly person with her head in a wheelchair, with her head on a desk, and said, "This is how I found my mother," I believe it was. "This is how I found my mother. This is a horrible place. Don't send your people there." Put it on her Facebook page, and it got, do you remember, 50,000 shares?
52,000.
52,000 shares immediately. 500 or 600 comments. The nursing home was caught completely unaware. And the fact of the matter is, what was happening was, at the family's request, they were moving her from a room that she shared with someone to a private room. And in the process of that room, that because she had a medical condition that she was slumped over, they gave her a pillow, put it on the desk, and while they were moving her for about 5 minutes, she was waiting while the second room was ready. This was an existential threat to this nursing home. There were so many people saying, on Facebook saying, don't put your parent there, don't put your grandparent there, don't put your loved one there. They engaged Scott and I, and what they did was they fought it with the facts. They went on social media and lined up exactly what had happened. Then they brought in independent people, people who were satisfied, who loved having their parents and grandparents there to testify on their behalf, also on social media. They also engaged the conventional media, the big local newspaper in town, which agreed to let the nursing home owner do a story, which we drafted for him, do a column on what had happened. Lasted about 2 weeks, week to 2 weeks, but they survived.
So was the person who took the photo of the motor really a family member?
No,
Okay, that's why.
it was not a family member. It was a friend. She knew her. And she was a person of she was a local minister actually. So she was a person of some local standing. But she simply did not know the facts of the situation. You can fight and win on social media, but you have to be engaged. And you have to be prepared. And in both of those cases, they were. Okay. So, for all of you, of course, social media represents a new challenge, and that's record retention. And by the way, this goes for your private social media accounts, if you use them in any way, really if you use them in any way, but particularly if you use them to talk about policy, to talk about your role with the city. And if you think that's a challenge for you, consider the Library of Congress. The library collected every single public tweet from 2006 to December 31st, 2017 from public officials, all of them. As of 2013, the Library of Commerce reported it was collecting 500 million tweets a day. And eventually the librarian said, "Uncle." So starting on January 1st, 2018, the library announced it would preserve tweets on a selected basis. And that now includes the tweets of President Trump and other lawmakers, for example, but not every single public tweet. So now they're probably just collecting tens of billions, not hundreds of billions. What about for you? Okay. I would definitely defer to your law director or another attorney or your city manager for definitive specific guidelines, but here are some broader guidelines. Ohio state record laws do include content from websites and social media. The Ohio Electronic Records Committee suggests that developing a social media management guideline should really be the important first step for all government agencies. That means you've got to take into consideration the content on your sites, when a public record is on them, and how you'll then meet the public records law for retention, disposition, etc. If the information on your social media site is deemed to be a public record, the next question is whether it's a primary record or a secondary copy. If the information is duplicated elsewhere, let's say there's a press release distributed on paper, it's usually going to be considered a secondary copy. But if the information is the primary record, you have to retain it with your agency's records retention and disposition policy. And as I said earlier, this is shaky, unknown ground right now. So take care what you post. Retention of documents, including social media, is based on the content and not the platform. They don't care if it's a personal Facebook page or a personal Twitter feed. Then, of course, how do you preserve these records? And then how do you find what you preserve? So, sites like Facebook and Twitter do offer archiving apps. And companies have popped up to help with archiving and searching preserved social media content. There's cost there, obviously, and you take care to make sure these companies have a tool that fits what you need. Preservica, Archive Social, and Reged, that's my typo, I apologize for that on the slide, it's R-E-G-E-D, are examples that at least market a government-specific archiving service. Because public records may be involved, blocking users to your social media sites or deleting posts may be seen as violations of open records law, and even the First Amendment, which we talked about at the outset today when we were talking about President Trump and the Virginia court case. So, can a public body, can a public official ever delete comments? Yes, you can. Based on best practices being used nationally, you're on safe ground deleting comments from citizens if they're abusive, threatening, sexually explicit, obscene, discriminatory, or that have commercial advertising or links to third-party sites. But even within that, you can see the slippery slope. For example, who's deciding that post is or is not discriminatory? In the case of the Virginia lawmaker, she deleted those posts because she believed they were a personal attack and were slanderous. A court of appeals has already held otherwise. So we strongly advise all clients who have social media sites to set out terms of use for your site. For example, in the About section on your Facebook page, if you go to your Facebook page and look to the left, there will be a little section that says About. Very few people use it. More people should. We strongly recommend that if you have an active Facebook page, in that About section, tell people visiting your page that posts that are obscene or profane or threatening will be removed. Include a disclaimer that you reserve the right to delete or remove comments. That may not always hold up in court. That disclaimer may not always hold up in court, but it's important nonetheless. Because outside the court of law, there's the court of public opinion. And in the court of public opinion, if you delete a comment, we can virtually guarantee the commenter will then either repost on your site or their own social media pages accusing you of censorship. And of course, it's not censorship, but that's what you've now been accused of. So having these rules for your own social media pages allows you to then cite the rules should you want to remove a comment. So here's some more best practices for elected officials with social media accounts. These are primarily drawn from a very helpful document I've used that's from the Association of Washington Cities. I can't stress this enough. You must make a clear distinction between official accounts, campaign accounts, and personal accounts. One way elected officials can clearly distinguish private social media accounts is by adding disclaimers. Remember that About section again on Facebook, on election and personal accounts, and not using the accounts for city business. At the same time, city-sponsored accounts, of course, may not be used for campaign-related purposes. And you need to understand and use the privacy settings to manage the account. If you're on social media and you haven't checked your privacy settings recently, do it tonight. Check to make sure that the privacy settings are where you want them to be. And have a plan in place to respond to or forward city-related comments to the city, including how that record is retained. So you have a personal Facebook page, people know you're on Painesville City Council, and they send you a post or a question about city business. You need to know what to do with that and how to handle it. And most of all, in the court's eyes, you need to establish a consistent process for how you handle it. Because if you don't, and you handle other questions one way, or other comments one way, and then you handle mine another, we're going to have a problem. And you're going to have a problem. So establish that process to follow if you receive a city-related question or comment on your personal account. Outline for yourself, and even better for the city so it's official, how the question or comment is going to be addressed and how that record is going to be retained. Don't write posts on personal accounts that would fit within the scope of your employment as a city council member. And I'm going to take a very broad interpretation of this, if I were you in considering this. I used to tell people in my newsroom, and this is particularly for private businesses, this is really shaky ground, and a lot of private businesses are afraid of going here. I really wasn't. I used to tell my reporters, okay, it's your personal Twitter account, it's your personal Facebook account. I can't tell you what to write on that. I'm not going to tell you what to write on that. But I'm going to tell you that if it reflects negatively on my newspaper, we have a problem. And I worked in union newsrooms, and I told the unions that, and we disciplined employees for that. Okay? So, you don't get away from being a city official just because you have a personal social media page. You're always a city elected official. That's the attitude I would take. That's the approach I would take. And what counts as city business, I would also take a very broad approach to that. Again, I'm not trying to scare you off of social media. We're not trying to scare you off of social media. We think it's an important way to engage with constituents, to present yourself and Painesville in the best possible light. But you have to do so carefully. Don't discuss your private accounts in public meetings or documents. Don't link to your private accounts from an official city account. Don't use city devices to maintain your private account. And then you have to ask yourself, when does social media chatter become a public meeting? And this is also a very crucial question. According to the National Conference of State Legislatures, if you have a quorum discussing or commenting on an issue, if any official business, policy, or public matter is formulated, presented, discussed, or of course voted on, that's a potentially, again, broad definition. And I would use the broad definitions to avoid problems. Court guidance is evolving, right? But the bottom line is to avoid inadvertent exchanges on social media that could violate notice and public meeting requirements. So, social media has become part of our lives. It's not going away. It's not going away. It's not going to become less important. If you're a person who's not on social media and you don't care about social media, that's fine, but at the least be aware that you have a lot of constituents who are on social media and do care. So even if you don't want to participate, to fail to monitor it is at your own risk and is at your own potential hazard. We encourage you to make it part of your elected official life. It's actually a great way to open up government and give people what so many want, which is a voice and access to you, their elected representative. But you have to do so smartly and with your eyes wide open. Take questions, comments. Let's talk about it. Yeah.
So it seems like the biggest outpoint is like when we have utilities down.
Right.
Our phone systems aren't working or something like that, so I guess that's, just respond back that we're looking into it,
Right. Right.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, just hearing from you to know that, somebody's sort of on the case, so to speak, I think means a lot to people.
It's better though if you can coordinate it, right? It's better if you can give that constituent a little bit of a link, somewhere to go. It does a couple of things. First of all, you have a more satisfied constituent because they've gotten help, they've gotten information. Second of all, it gets them the hell off your page and on onto an official page
Yes.
where they can actually get help.
So we always post any kind of big outage, the city always has an official statement about it, so I would just link to that statement.
Yeah, I would refer you to the city's statement here.
Yeah, I would say anything that like the best way to respond is, send them to Kathleen. Our communications person, her name is Kathleen, she can be reached at this phone number, or here's the City of Painesville's page, Facebook page, comment here. You can always send them to City of Painesville's page. Always send them to Kathleen. Yeah. I would say create a standard Painesville response
Yes.
and send that to every single person that has a Painesville comment, and the same comment every single time.
And that way you're consistent. You have that consistency on your social media sites. And again, you are getting them off of your personal page and onto an official page. You bring up another, what's becoming a really sensitive subject with elected officials. I also my newsroom people used to, when I would come down on them for that, they would say, well, you're taking away some of my rights here, because if you're a journalist, I don't want you out. You can't go out and, well, obviously if you're the restaurant reviewer, you can't go out and post a negative review about a restaurant. I didn't want my sports writers doing it. I didn't want anybody doing it. Because I used to say to them, you know what, you don't get to be Tom Flatting journalist for the 8 or 9 hours a day you're doing, and then not when you're not. And I would argue the same applies to all of you. You ran for this position, you got this position, God bless you for doing it. You're doing beyond your civic duty, but you're an elected official all the time. And I would be very careful with any sorts of reviews, opinions, anything like that, including on your personal pages. You can argue back at me about that, but ultimately, who's going to decide are the people out there.
On the side of archiving, so we're teaming up with communications and possibly police, and gonna hopefully put in our budget this for 2020. Is that what you're going into?
Yeah.
2020 to start archiving our social media. So I've already looked into it to try to get it for 2019, but we're trying to do it for 2020. And then once you do sign up for the archiving, it does go all the way back. So it does do post, post. So it goes all the way back to when we started our social media. So it will go all the way back to when we started. I just want to reiterate, if you are on social media and you are posting about city stuff or city things that are happening, or legislation that's going on, they can pull certain posts and your social media will be archived. And you don't want your whole social media account archived. We will have to pay for it, and I guarantee you don't want your social media account archived with the city of Painesville.
Where it lives forever.
And
by the way, social media
where it lives forever.
I mean,
So
that's everyone who tries to tell we used to say teenager, now they try to tell their 9, 10, and 11-year-old that. It lives forever. It never goes away.
Trump probably won't want that.
Can you clarify that last statement? So if we have a 911 outage and I on my personal social media account share the city of Painesville's post, that's getting archived?
No, like
Okay.
a shared post from the city of Painesville, if you're commenting like, new legislations post,
Gotcha.
we're trying to,
So if we're just
It could be a completely
sharing-
innocent, by the way, post.
yeah, if you're just direct sharing an event
Right.
or a post.
Because I was like, then we're going to be archiving every single
No.
resident.
I mean, like,
This will be the primary.
Yeah.
So we would
Yeah.
archive it as a primary. What you are sharing is just a secondary.
Now, if you said,
So if I comment on that post,
If
that
you
post
share
will-
it and say, this is the stupidest event
Yeah.
I've ever seen,
That
then
will-
we're gonna archive
yeah, then that will have to
because
be pulled in
that's your
archives.
personal thought of
Okay.
that.
and then, okay, so then when social media is archived, let's say that the whole City of Painesville page is going to be archived. Even delete, if someone goes back and deletes their comment, it will be even that deleted comment
Yeah.
will also be
Because it's in the
archived.
edit history.
It will be in
Correct,
the edit
yeah.
history, so even if that happens on your page, you know, it'll have to go back and be,
So then is this archived manually? Like, is somebody going through and determining, so it's
Really
just
is.
if things are flagged?
yeah.
I'm pretty sure that it's AI that will be pulling it
Uh-huh.
Okay.
and archiving.
And you have-
So I guess I'm hearing that if we have a social media account and the city is beginning to archive social media, we are going to be monitored by whoever is doing your archiving for you. Our social media accounts are going to be monitored
Yes.
as public.
As
officials.
are mine and,
Yep.
Correct.
yes.
I'm just clarifying.
Yeah.
So, how do you know who has what accounts?
If
Because
it's,
I ain't trying none of you guys.
yeah, but if it's a public account and you guys post something on there about Painesville, it will find you.
What if it's a business account?
I'm sure. it's-
Business account's always public.
Yeah.
A business account would definitely be subject to archiving under that.
Okay,
And,
so-
and would be subject to public records law, by the way.
Okay, so when I first came on board, I had dear council on my Facebook page. Dear Councilwoman Chu, Christine, 7 nights in a row, the street light across from 603 State Street does not come on or kick on until 9 p.m. At night it is very dark. Here, at night it is very dark here, living in the country. Please see what you can do about it. Now, I'm not a big Facebook person, so my sister came back and she said, Kristen, the street light in front of my house isn't working. You think you could fix it too? Because everybody's making a big joke out of this. So I finally saw it. Then this is what I did. I want to make sure this is what I did. I had no idea what to do, but this is what I did. So I came back and said, sure, Kathy, I will get a message to distribution tomorrow. Then I came back and said, Kathy, I received the notice that the light will be repaired later this week or early next week. Please let me know if this is going to happen. I am not a big Facebook user, and I was informed about your message from some family members because they know I'm not a regular. But you can find my contact information on the city website. Thanks, Christine. Then I came back and said, is the light fixed? And she said, hi, Christine. I answered you on your email, on your city email address, but I will let you know that Thursday, the men were out here before noon. Check it out. I have to talk to them about it all. But then I never got her response. So I think she did it right because city email is pretty secure. So then I came back and said, I went through my city email. I can't find anything. It was not sometimes it might not have been delivered. I wanted to follow up with the city manager. Could you send it again? And then I gave it to her. And then she got the email. I got it and I sent it to Monica. But it was just, I had no idea what to do with that. So
Sure.
where did I go wrong or?
I don't think you went wrong. What do you think, Scott?
No, I don't think you went wrong.
I think maybe perhaps a better course that I might have chosen is right from that initial, so you should
When I said,
respond.
sure, Kathy,
If you
I'll get
respond,
that.
that doesn't reflect well on you or the city, so you should respond. I think I would have immediately tried to get her to use my city email. You know, let's,
Offline, like.
yep, move it offline. Let's,
And I did that in a second.
I sent it to distribution. We're gonna try to get this fixed. Let's talk.
Yeah, I don't think there was
email me.
anything wrong. The whole chain of it could have been a little tighter though, just by
Right.
asking her to move it offline.
Move it offline as quickly as possible, and then immediately, when I'm emailing her on my city account, or I don't know, what do you think? I might even do it on that Facebook post, well, I wouldn't ask for her number there, but on the city email account, I'd ask for a cell phone number then, or a telephone number, so you can get to her directly.
Or give her yours.
My family thought that was the funniest thing on the planet.
Yeah,
They
and
were
then
like,
that-
I mean,
That would have been archived.
Well, that was, they were.
That would have been archived.
That would have been archived.
We're gonna, I mean, you're,
And there's nothing wrong with the fact that that was archived, just so you know that that would be archived.
That would have been archived or Christine's entire account now. Everything
No,
she writes is
that-
there.
That
post.
post.
This right here.
Yeah.
Not my sister coming back and giving me all kinds of crap about it, and my other cousin going, hey, we got a problem.
That whole conversation in post, including your sister's comments,
Yes.
would be archived.
yes.
So maybe the best direction would have been from that initial post, I hear you, I'll talk to distribution. I'm also going to give you the city manager's phone number. She can follow up with you, or city manager email, she follow up, but something to get her out of,
And on and off my Facebook.
And off of your Facebook
Right.
page.
out of that and onto somebody else's plate.
Most everybody I instant messaged me because they didn't want, they knew she was looking at it. So they
Yeah.
didn't want to make fun of her, so I don't know what it is. Has it been archived?
Yes.
Direct
Any-
messages.
Uh-huh.
Well, then I was like, it's okay. Stop with the jokes.
So then, if Christine didn't
The next few years.
respond, then all that would have been archived was her note and anything her sister said online. But if Christine didn't respond, all of that other information is still gonna be archived.
Yes.
Just that Christine won't have anything archived, but she's responded in it.
Correct.
Correct.
Mhm. So you see, but at the same time, it's going to be more and more common, people reaching out to their elected
I've never
representatives
had anything.
via social
since.
media.
But like pictures too, like I know that on the city account, we get sent pictures a lot of, you know, trees, potholes.
So what about texting?
Well, texting, we can archive your texts too.
So
That's why we
we've
say
been-
not to text.
We've debated about texting before.
Yeah, I know we have. So is it archived?
The state of Ohio has yet to take a complete stance
Right.
on it. The Attorney General did send out a letter 2 years ago stating that it's not quite public record at this point.
Right.
But if all 7 of you are texting each other and discussing city business, and someone takes you to court over it, we could possibly lose that.
Well, here's the other thing, and I'll point to, and they were not a client, I'm cautioning everyone right now, but I'll point to Oberlin College and its recent situation with Gibson's Bakery. All texts are subject to discovery, and you can't know what you might be sued about, or what the city might be sued about. So Oberlin had the uncomfortable experience of an open court text being read like F them in reference to Gibson's Bakery. And I'm not a lawyer and I don't play one on TV, but if I'm on that jury, that ain't gonna play well. And in fact, it was a $35 million verdict against Oberlin. So all texts are subject, if not public records law, to discovery.
So what you're saying is they can be subpoenaed. You
Yep.
just can't go in and get a text.
Right.
You have to get a court.
Oh, yes.
Right.
yes.
But for this agency who archives things to see, they have to catch these things, they have to be monitoring our entire account at all times, because you never know when something like that's gonna come out.
There'll be trigger words that,
Most likely what they have, or what we used to call, I don't even know if they still call them, but they used to call them spiders. And the spiders crawl the web, and they're looking for keywords.
Right.
And
So
but
they're not looking at
for
every post you make,
thousands of
but they'll
keywords.
be flagged when you make a post that says, you know, City of
So can we go
Painesville or
look- can we go
Painesville
look
or
and see
something
if
along
that's
these
there?
lines.
I'd be curious.
what'd you say?
Is it was 2 years ago. What were we doing 2 years ago? Were we doing this 2 years ago?
No, so what Valerie is saying is that part of your budget, she's gonna bring this forward
next-
to discuss with it, but it will archive backwards.
Yeah.
So if you guys choose to move in this direction, which we're getting,
It's a requirement. It's illegal.
we're getting
It has to
pushed to
happen.
say that it's a requirement, then everything backwards is also gonna be
So they're
archived.
gonna find it.
They will go through.
They will
yeah.
find that.
So our city page was created in 2010. Almost 9 years.
So where does this stop? I mean, are they gonna start monitoring their phone calls?
No, we're not gonna be archiving your phones.
No, but I'm
It's
just saying, we talk
Right.
city business on our phones.
Well, not all together, I mean, we might call one another.
No, but we still talk.
By the
You're allowed to
social-
talk city business 2 or 3 at a time, you just can't have 7 people talking
Right.
city business.
Some-
I agree, but that's not being archived.
But that's why the social media world is still shaky ground. That's
Correct.
why we're not exactly sure where the courts are gonna draw the lines yet, because no one's gotten to the point where they've drawn the lines yet.
Phone calls don't create a public record, and phone calls aren't considered published material.
Right.
Everything on social media is considered published material.
Well, texting is a phone. That's on
I
my
think we
phone.
need this.
That's on my personal.
Council procedure.
I understand.
I mean, I think we need to have a council procedure policy, and council policies and procedures on this. And so we need to take this to meet and decide what that is going to be, maybe with legal advice.
Yeah.
For archive or for text?
No,
For social media.
For social media groups,
Right,
period.
that's something that Joe Gurley would,
Right. So Kathleen's already started working on processes for that.
So we have an outdated social media policy
As a city.
Yes,
that I'm working on updating,
How old is it?
2012,
Wow.
so in social media terms.
but that's
Should we
just,
talk about MySpace?
Doesn't
but that's just city, that's not, that's
That's just
personal
city, that is
pages.
not any of your pages.
So dare I ask what the price tag is on something like this?
I actually do have prices.
Valerie's done the work, not me, I
Yeah.
don't know.
I don't have them with me, but I did get, I think it's like, it's not too bad.
So if we don't want our, how do we, if we don't want them archived, we just, I have to get rid of my
Then
Facebook.
don't do any city business.
Well, I don't, that's
And
one and
don't
only.
even do like a wide swath of city business. Like, don't even mention companies that might be coming to the city as part of our economic development plan. You can't mention anything.
Or like not reposting on our Facebook page, that the police department closed this road or any of that kind of stuff. That's also opening ourselves up for that.
Pretty much
Well-
anything opens yourself up to it.
You
But I
need to
can
take
share
a
the
very
post as
broad
well.
definition of what is city business.
So
I mean, if
that
you're
is,
not, assume the city.
that is strictly because we are elected officials.
Exactly.
Or if Tom, Dick, and Harry
So when I
share
lose in the
posts-
falls, you're not allowed,
You're
right?
not gonna lose.
Me too! Yay, we're done! Retirement!
Right, if Tom, Dick, and Harry are re-sharing the, party in the park, and they're saying, this event was awful, they're not going to, they don't care.
So is it only if it's a narrative? If it's a direct share and I make no narrative comment
It's
on
not
it,
gonna get.
It would not be primary.
Okay, so it's only if I attach a narrative to that
Yes.
share.
Because that would be
So that's
your,
Which I don't
It's
do.
gonna be
that would be
your,
your personal publication
Yes.
of that.
and it's opening up, it's
You
opening.
just
On
created
my
a,
Facebook, when I share a Painesville City post, I do not attach.
here's the way to think
And it's
about it.
opening it up for comments then, and then
Correct.
opinions of others.
Yeah.
Correct.
Like I just share for informational purposes. I don't share my opinion when it comes to anything when I'm direct sharing posts.
And that also would include, take a look at this, right? I mean, you don't even put any words, because the minute you put a word, it's,
No, it would just be like an opinion attached
You're
attached
just
to it.
sharing a post, you're not writing about it.
Yeah.
What
So
about-
it's if I do it.
What about functions that aren't the cities, like party in the park? I mean, it's really not a city function.
But you're an elected official.
Comment on something that's, has nothing to do with the city, I mean, that is
In the city.
held in the city.
The only thing I can tell you, I mean, that's a very good question. The only thing I can tell you is at your risk.
Right, you can have your opinion about things, but just know it's going to be archived.
When we go and sign up with a company that is gonna do our archiving, they can come in and talk to us and discuss with you what will be archived and what will not be archived.
Yeah.
So you can have your stances and opinions, but just know that it's.
I advocate for a bigger
Just as, just as if you and I were talking,
can archive.
and you said, you criticized party in the
You
park,
archived your.
and I know you were a city council person.
Add
It
council
carries
meetings
different
again.
weight. It just does.
But what if I criticize mentors, not even mentors?
It's still,
Again, you're doing so,
yeah.
you don't get away from being an elected
Those
official.
What I would ask,
Right.
what I would ask is, when we choose an archiver, maybe they can take somebody's personal social media account, look
Good
at it,
example.
and
Good
say,
idea.
these 10 posts fall under.
That would be either Katie or Paul, just so you know.
yeah, or me, I have one from 2016, August.
They're gonna use
4.
Jim's, and we're all gonna be in the clue. Because Jim
I
has
don't have
0 digital footprint.
If you're willing to open your personal page up
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
we can go through that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just as long as they ignore the obscenities that I say about Monica, we should be fine. Okay, love you.
Those are gonna be archived.
Those were
She's
good.
already got it.
Yeah. She's like
Thank
screenshot,
you.
screenshot.
Tick, cross, tick, tick.
The other thing I'll tell you is that you may run into, they don't do it as much as they used to, but you may run into consultants who will tell you the answer is to set up a personal page and set up a city page.
Yeah. But they, either way.
Time and practice have proven that you can't really separate it.
So really, what you want to do is direct people from your personal page
Yeah.
to the city website.
Correct. Correct.
That's the bottom line.
And just realize.
Without a narrative.
Or just make yourself a private page and approve who gets to be your friend and only make
Make
it,
it
you know,
9
15 people.
Right.
And you guys didn't bring up blocking people. Have any of you ever blocked someone?
No. Well, I unfriend them. Is that blocking?
Yes.
No.
Well, so we hired only,
Do that on the phone.
I did, me too.
Although that could be an interesting court case. I bet I could find an attorney who'd be more than willing
Oh, I'm
to take that on.
What, that
That you unfriended a constituent and thus denied them access to city
Well, that's true.
business.
so then my
Remember
question,
privacy settings.
if you have strict privacy settings,
Yeah.
and you, like, very strict privacy settings, and I do a narrative, they won't be able to view my
Oh, they'll still
post.
find
Okay,
Yeah, so
They do the archive.
Facebook's privacy is not really private. I mean, my page is completely private and pretty much everyone has seen my page. It's completely private and you can still find it. Facebook privacy is not.
I would say that the most important thing to take away from this is to make sure that you do put the rules in place that he said.
yeah, absolutely.
And it says to make sure that you have, you know, we don't take bullying, we don't, you know, have negative comments, and then you have that in place for if you do have to remove someone, then you have that in place in case something happens.
So we should not look at Facebook on our laptop.
No.
And if you'd like, we have a generic guideline for your about page.
So what you're telling me is that on my Facebook page, say if I have one I use it, any Hazel residents who request me to be a friend, I have to accept.
You still get something.
No.
That's what you're saying.
Wait, say it again.
No.
Because if you say no,
Unless they're a friend
no.
of yours and they say something you don't like and you block
Surely you
them,
should have
that's
one on
different
city.
than just not being
But
friends
if
with
you
them.
deny them.
I'd ask my law director.
Because that's what we.
Honestly, I'd ask my law director.
I
I would. And I think
And
that,
Well, we got a lot of,
yeah.
just gonna go, what, Facebook?
Just like what's Facebook?
Is that MySpace?
It may go back to your privacy settings, as Scott said, and I think the law director will probably say that's unsettled law.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is unsettled.
You're on the, hey man, you're on the cutting edge.
Yeah.
It's the wild, wild
Like-
west.
Like I know, oh God, like 6 years ago, somebody came to me and said that I was posting things on my Facebook that were inappropriate. I wasn't. But at that point, I went in and I weeded out anybody that wasn't a personal, close friend from my Facebook. Because at that point, I was like, well, clearly people are malicious, and I don't have time for this. Show me a screenshot, otherwise it didn't happen. So that was 6 years ago, so I'm covered now, 6 years later. You can go back.
I think another important point too is like if we have any kind of crisis situation or big news, it's important that it comes from the city first.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was me.
Well, and that's, I think, the biggest thing when we were going through this training was that's not something we would be doing. You know, like, we are not telling the story, we're not telling it first. We might be the first to repost it. But we're not gonna be the one that's doing it. And I, just so you know, was thanking God that we have you now as we were going through that. Because there's been so many times that we needed to have that narrative happening, but we didn't have the staffing to be able to do it. So I appreciate you.
Me too.
Yeah, thank you.
Seriously.
Tell her anything I can. Thank you for taking that over.
Yeah, because once people see you as a source of news, you're just gonna get more and more questions.
Well, I was afraid I was gonna get a lot more.
That's why I got locked.
So,
No. An hour and a half of my life.
Are we gonna get, are we gonna move to adjourn? Are we done? Any more questions?
And on that
On
note,
that note, we're not lying, we're telling the truth.
it's not
Yeah,
on social media, it didn't happen.
yeah.
It
The
will
last
be-
thing I
It will
also,
be tomorrow.
the last thing I also will tell you that we didn't include as part of our presentation was, I guarantee you, the first place journalists now go when they hear about a story is to your social media pages to see what's going on. It is the #1 tip sheet. And what they find curl your hair, your hair's not all the way through. Because nobody uses their privacy settings correctly, and everybody messes up their social media. I hope that was helpful.
Yes.
I hope it was practical and there's something you can put in place from. Any other questions?
I'm just gonna post pictures of cats.
There you go. You'll get a lot of traffic.
Some of these-
You don't